Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to Meet the Candidates. We're going to try to start on time and stay on schedule. My name is Peter Morrison with the Civic League, and we're pleased to host today's forum, consistent with the Civic League's mission to promote Nantucket's general welfare through informed citizen participation in community affairs. In case you didn't know it, the Civic League represents 24 neighborhood associations, and we have over 1,900 dues-paying families. And I would like to encourage all of you to be sure that you have signed in up there so that we can keep you informed. We just want your name and email address. That way we can keep you informed of events like this. Today's Meet the Candidates forum is designed to inform you about the candidates, their qualifications, and their positions on particular issues. And this event is going to be televised repeatedly. More than anybody will want to watch. It's going to be saturated over the airwaves. You'll be able to access it either by going on to the various channels, or you'll be able to watch it on demand by live streamed video if you have the appropriate thing on your computer. And you get to that by simply going to the town website, and there's a banner that says live streaming video, so you can watch it anytime you want. And the nice part is you can fast forward on some of it to particular parts you want to see. We have a schedule that is given here for how we want to conduct things, and we're going to start out by allowing each candidate to offer a 2-minute presentation on qualifications for office and position on issues. And then we are going to ask our two panel questioners at the end here, Mr. Barnes and Mr. Kickham, to cross-examine the candidates on particular issues chosen at random or targeted with specific questions that they have for specific candidates. After that, each candidate will be allowed a 1-minute response to the initial question and a half-minute response to follow-up. Then we're going to have questions from the audience, and the way you will be able to ask questions from the audience is either to have brought them in with you on a piece of paper, or to facilitate the process as we go along, I will periodically ask you to raise your hand, and we have people who will come by with a piece of paper and a pen. So if you raise your hand, Mr. Ringer here will quickly speed to where you are. We have two people doing it. Just raise your hand, you get the piece of paper, write the question down, and then when you're done, get their attention, they'll pick it up, and then what I'll do is I'll try to screen through these and get them into some kind of order. So we're going to start with, and we have things set up in alphabetical order here. We're going to start with a 2-minute presentation by Mr. Dooley, who is directly to my right. Mr. Dooley?
Yeah. Afternoon, people in Nantucket. I am Joseph Dooley. I am a commercial fisherman year-round here. I don't know, some of you know me, some of you don't. If you don't know me, you probably should. Qualifications, God asked me to do this. I feel I have to. I don't really want to, but I need to. I'm honest, truthful, don't lie, don't cheat, don't steal, mind my own business. And positions on issues, there's a lot of issues, there are a lot of problems here. It's a matter of getting rid of the corruption and the influence of it here before you can do anything. It has affected too many things here, way too many things here. I've had firsthand experience with it, so I know where to look. The issues basically are getting Nantucket back to a quality of life that is Nantucket, not something that's off island and everything that's off island. People have forgotten what it's like to live here, to enjoy beaches, to be able to go up Great Point any time of the year. A lot of different things. You people know what they are. I'm here with God, for God, standing with God, for you people, so you've got a good choice on a positive future. I'm investing all my time in this, nothing in it for me, power, money, fame, whatever. I don't care. I just want to do the right thing. I'm from here. I have family here, friends here, so I have a concern. and I care. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dooley. Ms. Dunton, you're up next. 2 minutes.
Hello, I'm Carol Dunton, as many of you know. Why am I running and what are my qualifications? I'm running to serve the people of Nantucket. I'm running to be your voice on the Board of Selectmen, a voice representative of the broader community. We came around the point about 30 years ago. My daughters were raised here. They were 8 and 11 when we came here, graduated from Nantucket High School, and my husband and I have run a caretaking business for 30 years. I'm an excellent manager. I view government somewhat in a management way. But what is most important to me is to get the citizenry more involved across the board, with committees, with running for office, whatever. I became an involved citizen in 2009 when I brought forward a petition to downsize this police station. It was a petition not intended to say you don't need a police station. I just felt it too large for what the community's needs were. Since then, I felt that I have very much stayed an involved citizen. And so, and you may have heard me say this, the more involved we are, the more influence we have, and the more transparent town government is. And that is a strong point of my position. Thank you.
Mr. Fee, you're up next.
Hi, my name is Matt Fee. I'm a baker. I own Something Natural. I'm a former Board of Selectmen member. I was the co-chair of the Comprehensive Plan, and I'm currently on the Finance Committee. I've volunteered for a ton of different nonprofits, soccer, lacrosse, helped build the fields out at Delta, was a founding member of Sustainable Nantucket, and so I've done, I've been involved in the community in that way. I've coached kids, all those kinds of things. I've got almost 40 years business experience with my family. We had the Skipper Restaurant, Henry's Sandwich Shop, Something Natural, Henry's Sandwich Shop. So I've been doing that since I was a kid. I know what it takes to meet a payroll. I know what it takes, what important things need to be done downtown so businesses are successful. I know, looking at it, I know the pressures that the businesses downtown are under. So I think that's a really important issue that I can help with. And the other, it's interesting, there's I've had probably 1,000 different employees, and I've got people now all through the island that have worked for me. Cisco Brewers, Nantucket Physiotherapy, Juice Bar. There's employees, some of my old employees everywhere. It's kind of like the Belichick coaching tree. Right now, I think that I've got a business degree from, economics degree from Harvard, and I think my analytical skills and my ability to back up and look at the big picture are would be very complementary to the existing board or to the board and anyone else who's elected here. And I think that is the issue. That's when we'll talk about that, I'm sure, further. But I think it would be very complementary. Time is right for me. My children are in college. I have time now, and I'd love to be elected. Thank you.
Mr. Glidden?
Thank you, everyone, for coming this evening. I'd like to thank the Civic Club for hosting this event and what qualifies me to be Board of Selectmen. I grew up here. I've been part of this community for a long time, and I have a long legacy and history of being with people and talking to different diverse groups on Nantucket and getting them involved. And that's what I really want to bring to the Board of Selectmen, is get more people who need to be engaged in our politics engaged. I think we are facing times ahead of us where there's a lot of new problems, big fiscal pyramids that the younger people are going to be inheriting. and we need to work together to deal with those. And I'm focusing on getting people moving in a healthy way, focusing on bicycles, a sustainable way of living that includes financial ways, and I really support and love the idea of someone who can be a politician, but just as a person, I just want to be able to listen to people and be humble and do what I can for my community. So thank you.
Mr. Maury.
Sorry about that. First of all, Peter, I want to thank you, and I want to thank you, Christy, and you, Curtis, and the Civic League as a whole, and everybody for coming out today. You know, there's few things that are more important in a town and in town government than an informed and involved citizenry. The more people feel like their voice is heard, I think the better off we all are. And to that end, I would, you know, as a selectman, if I'm elected, what I'd like to do is reconstitute some of the advisory committees, the citizen advisory committees that have disbanded in recent years. I'd like to let people know that their voice is not only welcome, but it's appreciated. So we should seek out and we should act on citizen input wherever that is possible. I'm not running for mayor. I don't think that I have the answer to everything, and I'm not sitting here telling you that we're going to have broad sweeping changes if I were to be elected. That's not what I want to do. That's not what I think we need. I want to work with the existing board members. I want to work with town administration and with the department heads to improve everything as best we can incrementally. You know, we can't you know, do everything overnight, but we can continue the good work of the board to look at the long-term financial implications of the decisions we make now, to make sure that we can manage debt as we have to undertake it so that it's a manageable ratio in proportion to the, you know, total operating budget of the town. You know, we need to look at things like supplemental energy projects and you know, other ways that we can make quality of life better for people. Just a little bit every day adds up to a lot over time. We need to look at things like the reorganization of Plus and making town government more friendly for business enterprises, people who need to make a living out here and need town government to work with them and not stand in the way. Thank you.
Mr. Reinhardt.
Thank you. I also would like to thank the Civic League for putting on this signature event that we do to inform the community. As far as my qualifications, I first came to Nantucket in 1960, August of 1960, as a teenager, and I spent the next 30 summers working here. I managed then Own Snow's bicycle shop on Main Street. I spent a total of 22 years in business on Main Street, and for the last 22 years I've worked for the Nantucket Conservation Foundation as their Middlemore's Ranger. It's a nice yin-yang existence in that I've seen the downtown from a first-hand perspective. I'm familiar with the problems of the downtown, and I very strongly believe that the downtown is the soul of Nantucket, and we need to pay attention to our downtown. I've been involved in a number of both appointed and elected positions in the community. My first elected office was back in 1992 when I was elected to the County Charter Commission. That commission was later reformed in 1995 as the Town and County Charter Commission, and we wrote charters. I was the secretary of that committee, and we wrote charters, the current charters for the town and county. Over the years, I've served as Land Bank Commissioner. I've been 10 years. I'm up for re-election this year for a third term on the Land Bank. I've served on a number of other committees as well. The Town Government Study Committee from 2005 to 2007, where we took a very comprehensive look at town government and made a series of recommendations. Of those, anyway, that's my background. Thank you.
Ms. Roggeveen?
Yes, thank you, Peter. I wanted to also thank everyone from the Civic League for their commitment to this, and to make it a little different, because I know the rest have also thanked you. I would point out this is actually my 5th time sitting at a candidates discussion, and I find each and every one of them so unique and so valuable to the process that for us as well as for the constituents, it's an invaluable experience. As far as why I'm running, that's never changed. It's very interesting. I started this course back in 2006, I believe, was the first time I ran. And I explained to you then what I'll explain to you now. I run to make Nantucket a better place because I'm a mother on this island. I have 3 children that grew up here and are growing up here. And to me, it's invaluable that we retain so many of the important characteristics of Nantucket for them and for future generations. Obviously, the fallout is for all of us to benefit. But for me, my passion is firmly set in my passion of being a parent, and I don't believe that that's something that I've changed in all the time that I've been on the board. My qualifications, I've been 6 years on the Board of Selectmen. You've gotten to see me every Wednesday night or thereabouts every Wednesday night. Within that context, I really enjoy it when someone comes up to me, maybe at the grocery store or somewhere else and says, I don't always agree with you, but I have trust and I have confidence in what you do. And that to me is invaluable. That to me is very, very special. And that to me is what I commit back to you. I will continue to perform in that way. Your trust and your confidence in my decision-making, meaning, yes, I've done my homework, yes, I've considered the facts and weighed the issues, and when I'm confronted with what are oftentimes very important decisions regarding your livelihood, your family, your future, I've taken that seriously. And for me, that's an important qualification. Another is leadership. I've served at least 2 years as the chairman of the board, and within that time, I've also served various components as vice chairman and chair of the county commissioners. One of the things I'm most proud of, though, is even though I served only 2 years as chair, I was 4 years as chair of the audit committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we transition into questions from our 2 panelists, I want to ask those of you in the audience, if this has prompted any questions, would you raise your hand at this time, and we'll have people come by with cards so you can write them down. Next, we're going to have questions from our 2 panel questioners, and what we want here is a 1-minute response to be followed by a half-minute response in follow-up. And I'd like to start with Mr. Barnes. Can you give us our first question and point it towards someone?
Thank you, Peter. I'd like to address this to Matt. We have talked, and in the discussions in the Inc and M about important issues coming up for the town, we've talked more and more about revitalizing downtown. And I am looking at more decentralization as we go on. I'm looking at this facility which doesn't exist anyplace downtown. So my question is, what could and would and should we do to be able to bring the important functions such as the tax office and the selectmen and everything back into downtown?
I think the first thing you do is have to have the will, understand that it's important and we need to do it. And I think that's pretty evident. The amount of business that's lost by, it isn't just the town employees that are working downtown, it's everyone that goes into their offices every day, and all that adds up. So I think we have to have the will and determine we want to be downtown. Once we do that, then we have to figure out how to pay for it, how to get those buildings back, and how to pay for it. We'll have to do an addition. We'll have to use the properties properly down there. We may move the planners back to Washington Street, move the other people back into the core of downtown. But I think it's, as Alan was saying, it's the heart of Nantucket. The downtown is why people come here. And we're going cross purposes right now where we're taking suburban zoning and suburban buildings with parking lots around them, and it just doesn't feel right. So we have to decide that we want to go back to the urban environment that is Nantucket.
I'm going to randomly select Mr. Maury as the next person to, if you'd like to respond to that question.
Sure, absolutely. It's very important that we get as many town offices as is feasible and makes sense. Not all town offices can be downtown. I don't believe that the Plus services should be downtown. I don't think anything that requires the amount of traffic that Plus generates with the builders and anybody who needs inspectional services need to be able to get in and out of there quickly. The fleet of trucks that they have to do their inspectional services don't belong downtown. Everything that's out Washington Street now, the tax collector and the finance offices should return.
The next randomly chosen candidate is Mr. Glidden.
Thank you. I think one really important thing is when we talk about downtown revitalizations, we need to talk about the Mid-Island too. Business isn't run just on the downtown or just on the Mid-Island. We need to focus on bringing them together and having them work better. And in that regards, we need to focus on changing some roads going one ways in Pleasant and Sparks to make it function a little better so downtown is more accessible. And then as far as downtown goes, the Mooney Building, bringing offices back down, the old fire station, I would support bringing those and making those more part of the community. Thank you.
Ms. Raghaveen?
Sure. There's a couple of issues here with respect to town that we're actually currently grappling with, and they all point to the decisions over offices. The first thing we need to do is to look at the old fire and police station in town and actually get some sense of what it would cost us to bring it up to code. There's going to be a very important fiscal issue with respect to what we do with that space, and we are now in the process of trying to at least address that with a proposals that may look at how the cost and what the effect of the cost and what the effect of the new FEMA regulations are on that cost to the downtown.
Ms. Dutton?
In respect to bringing more into the downtown, I think we have to rely on the current Space Needs Committee to decide exactly 10 years out, 15 years out, and currently what we actually need as far as square footage of office space. This building being out of town, plus being out of town, there are Mid-Island businesses.
You can finish your sentence. The bell means you should finish your sentence.
Okay. There are Mid-Island businesses. We are a small town. And I think we have to look at the core district as far as what the core district can handle as far as traffic, et cetera, et cetera. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Reinhardt?
Yes. As I said before, I think the downtown is really the heart of Nantucket. In terms of bringing town employees back into town, I agree. But before we do that, we have to address two things. First, the facilities. We need to have a safe, workable environment for the employees to work from. We also have to address the parking issue. And the way that I think it ought to be done, the way government works is the Board of Selectmen are the highest elected officials. We have a town manager who is supposed to follow the directives of the Board of Selectmen, and of course the various offices. So I think that if the Board of Selectmen make this a priority, getting the folks back into town and directing the town manager to come up with a plan, that's the way this will happen.
Mr. Dooley? Speak into the microphone. Actually, turn it on also. Good.
Yeah. I don't know who tore the heart out of Nantucket. Wasn't me. But it seems like since I've been home that everything that made this town has been put outside of town. I mean, there's no fish markets in town. I mean, I go someplace as a tourist. I like to smell a fish market. I like to be able to relate to the small town I'm from. Yeah. None of that's there. There's no barber shop. There's no little Henry's sandwich shop. There's glitzy places selling things that people here don't buy. We don't need that stuff to live. The town offices and buildings, putting them back in town is going to congest the town more until a solution for the traffic problem and limitation of automobiles by the state or us coming here so that we can limit the traffic and come up with a plan for parking. Nothing's going to work in town. You've got to have a place to be able to park, to be able to go to town.
Next, I'd like to call on Mr. Kickham to pose a question for the candidates.
Okay. I'll start with Carol on this one. In the not-too-distant future, there could be considerable discussion pertaining to erosion on the Sconset Bluff. and most likely key decisions have to be made in the next 3 years. How would you rate the current situation, and what opinions do you have pertaining to the issue?
I haven't taken my annual walk below the bluff since the recent storms, but I was at Sankaty Light a week or two ago, and what has happened this winter is just phenomenal. Baxter Road, we've got to bring that to the forefront. As far as erosion control, erosion happens, and we have to plan around that. It's not complicated.
Mr. Glidden, you are up next if you want to answer that.
Yes, thank you. I think it's a big issue that's going to need to be talked about by the people, and I would like to see this come up on a ballot vote, whether we want to pursue blocking this off with barriers or whatnot. You know, I've had a grandparent who lost a house into the ocean, and I really don't see how you can hold it back. So I think it's something we're going to need to look at and assess. I don't know all the answers. It's hugely complex dealing with such a change in climate, and I'm really looking at more long-term solutions as how we can deal and live as Nantucketers in this changing environment. Thank you.
Mr. Reinhardt.
Thank you. Erosion is something, of course, that Nantucket will deal with until we're another sandbar. In the meantime, there are a number of things that are happening right now. If you walk along the North Shore, you'll find everything from revetments to the choir, other things that break the wave energy. Same along the South Shore. I think as a community, we have a responsibility to the people who live along the shoreline to do what we can as far as preparing for erosion.
Mr. Fee.
I think the situation, we have to be careful that the solution, quote unquote, isn't worse than the cure. A lot of times, a lot of the hard armoring and some of the things that people really want to do make it worse down waves, down and where the flow goes. So we really, I feel badly, but I just don't know, how you can stop Mother Nature. I don't know if the ocean wants to do this. The ocean's going to do it, and we need to help these people bring their houses elsewhere and do something that way. I just don't see it.
Mr. Dutton. I'm sorry, Mr. Dooley.
We can't fool with Mother Nature. You gotta leave it alone. Every time somebody puts up one of those walls, I'm out there fishing, I see where it's going. Until you know the hydrodynamics and the dynamics of the tide, every time you put something like that up, it's gonna affect something on the other side of the island, maybe the vineyard. You don't know what you're tampering with. Better off just letting it go. We're on an island. You have to realize when you come here that if you build a house on the water, it's gonna be gone in a number of years. It's a limited thing.
Ms. Ragavines?
Sure. This year in particular has been very dramatic, as we all know, on the erosion issue. Many people that I know who own homes on the bluff, especially in Wisconsin and other places, have noted that it's almost been 10 years worth of damage this year comparatively to the last few winters. What I wanted to look at, though, is the municipal impact. We're going to be losing roads there soon, and I know that we as a town have been starting to get our head around what are we going to do with respect to that. I mean, we're already dealing with it at some level in other places, but certainly on Baxter Road, we need to make some plans as a municipality as to how we address access and things of that nature. Mm-hmm. And these are very short little windows, just to...
Mr. Maury.
We owe it to our neighbors in Baxter Road, and we owe it to ourselves to investigate any means of erosion mitigation. Now, over the very long term, the ocean's going to sweep over the whole island, and we won't be here at all. But if you look on a shorter scale, we can do things to reduce the impact that the ocean's going to have on our shorelines. So anything we look at, and anything we try to do, we have to whatever degree we can, make sure that it's not going to injure neighboring shorelines, not going to injure any other property owners, but we need to let people try to save their homes.
Mr. Barnes, can you give us the next question?
Yes, indeed. There is an article in the town meeting warrant this year about the HDC. I happen to know since I sponsored it. And the question is whether the members, the commissioners of the HDC, should be appointed or elected. And I would be very interested to know, for example, what Mr. Reinhardt would think about that.
Thank you. The town government study made a recommendation that there were several boards that should be appointed rather than elected. And to this day, I still agree. The HDC, the Planning Board, and the Shellfish and Harbor Advisory Board are three of them. The reason I feel, particularly with regard to the HDC, is that you're looking for people who have background and expertise. I personally feel that you're more likely to get people with that kind of background through the appointed process rather than the elected process. The other factor is that elections are not easy. There are a lot of people who don't want to put themselves in harm's way, so to speak, to run for election. And where you're looking for top quality candidates in the HDC in particular, where the question is, or the planning board, I think that you're more likely to have a wider pool of people who have the background you're looking for if you have an appointed board as opposed to an elected board.
Mr. Glidden.
Thank you. I really feel that the mixed approach is going to be best. Some appointed members and some elected. I'd like to see the majority be elected. And the real issue we're facing with the HDC is that we need to have a more streamlined, balanced approach. And if we can get people in there who are interested in getting a regimented process that incorporates the historical nature of the town, and that's something I understand as a Mason and working with those buildings, then we can move forward better. So thank you.
Mr. Fee.
I think the idea of a appointed HDC is a positive one for the reasons that Alan has already mentioned. But this alone is not a cure-all for the HDC. I think some of the direction being given there by some of the members has slowed it down. I think it needs to be quicker. I think the HDC needs to be more responsive. I also think the Preservation Trust made a bunch of recommendations which should all be followed because the HDC needs to be tighter in town. It needs to be loosened a little bit more in the outskirts. So if we could follow those, it would be a positive. This alone won't do it. Thank you.
Ms. Dunton?
The HDC and planning should definitely remain strongly the elected boards. In the election process, you get a wider representation at the ballot than you do from a 5-member board of selectmen that may be politically influenced. And the HDC has begun, under its new chair, to revamp. It will take time. It's an entrenched system, and we need to just give it the time to respond to the community's needs in a different way. Thank you.
Mr. Maury.
The HCC needs to remain elected. The election process isn't so rough that people don't step up to take these jobs. I mean, there's 7 of us up here right now. One of the issues with appointing people to the HTC is that the Board of Selectmen is also the appeals board. So if we're going to be appointing people to this board, then we're going to have to change that whole system. And these cases on appeal are going to have to go directly to the state Supreme Court or elsewhere, which could be problematic.
Ms. Raghaveen.
Yeah, I think it's very important when we think about the HDC to remember that our real intention here is to preserve the historic nature of our town. Given that, we're going to have differences of opinion as to how best we can organize. I believe the very value of this warrant article is to have finally asked the question strongly about what the HDC, how it's doing, what's its nature, and maybe it has some problems, and I think it does, and I think we can all agree with that. As we go forward and we look at changes to the HDC, I'm a little concerned about it happening at town meeting. It just doesn't seem like that's the proper place to vet this. I'd be more interested in having the current board continue to take a look at itself, but to ask those hard questions so that we get the best possible answer at the end of the day.
Mr. Dooley.
Appointments allows the corrupt to put their friends in there. vote-ins, get a wide range, good selection, it's more fair. No certain people have control over anything. Harbor development, I have a lot of ideas, I see a lot of opportunities. I've been involved with fisheries and fishing my whole life. Nantucket is a gold mine, and no one's using it. We've got the wrong people in there. I've lived on the water 10 and 12 years on boats here, and trust me, when I do everything better than everybody else that's getting big money to do it, we have a problem. We should have our own people doing these things, people with the experience. We don't need outside experience coming here.
Mr. Kickham, the next question, please.
I'll address this to Mr. Maury. Every year for town meeting to decide, the town of Nantucket funds a financial supplement to many human service providers on island through the contract review process. The town is not obligated to do this, but has done so going back many years. The funded amount this year is $317,000. What do you feel is the benefit of this supplement, or could the money be better used elsewhere?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the last part of that?
What do you think the benefit of this supplement to the human service providers is from the town, or could the money be better used elsewhere?
The money could be used elsewhere, but it can't be used better elsewhere. These services that are being funded by this supplement include things like the cottage hospital and a safe place, and things that are vital to different members of our community. Absolutely essential. Frankly, money needs to be spent. That's where it needs to go. People need the services that are being supplemented by this.
Mr. Reinhardt?
The human services is a very important part of the responsibility, I think, of any community. Several years ago, there was a move to form a collaborative to make sure that those funds that the town expends were expended wisely and more efficiently. I think that process has improved over the years, and as far as the benefit, I feel that it is an important responsibility of the community, and it is something the town does need to pursue as far as distributing those benefits through the collaborative.
Mr. Glidden?
Thank you. I really see it, to be honest, I don't know that much about the supplements, but ideally I like to see things included in budgets and accounted for in the first year, in 5 years, 10 years, and for my generation in 30 years. So I think that really needs to be factored in how we deal with the financial burdens of this town. We're looking at millions and millions of dollars over the next year with large capital spending, and we need to deal with that. So thank you.
Ms. Dunton?
$317,000 is such a small percentage of our total budget. At some point, I figured it out. And what Human Services accomplishes with that amount is just amazing. The Human Services budget is reflective of a caring community, and I would support certainly keeping it and upping it somewhat to strengthen their position.
Mr. Fee?
I support keeping it and possibly increasing it. One of the problems that we've had is that other things have crowded out human services. It hasn't grown in the last 10 or 15 years because the money wasn't available and money has gone elsewhere. So we can consolidate and try to use it more efficiently, but it's, how you spend your money is a reflection of your values, and things like human services and the library and other places, some of which aren't funded any longer, should be. And if we get control of other parts of the budget, we will be able to spend more there.
Ms. Raghavi?
I would agree. I think there's a lot of need in the island right now, and I'd be supportive and have been in the past for giving it a bit more. But as far as the way that it's distributed, let me hit 3 points, which I think are very important. The Contract Review Committee allows us to prioritize as a community our needs. The groups get together, they come together as to what priorities are. It helps us institute financial accountability on the money that we do give out, because there are records that need to be kept. All of them come for interviews before they're awarded their awards, and during the period of time they have communication with the Contract Review Committee. And finally, it allows the municipality to not be in the business of providing human services, but to support very wonderful local organizations that are in that business.
Mr. Dooley.
Isn't that what we're supposed to do with money and everything? Isn't that the godly thing, Christian thing, religious thing, is if there's something there that we can help other people with, isn't that what we're supposed to be doing?
Mr. Barnes, could we have the next question, please?
Absolutely. Those of us who are on town sewer have seen the cost of sewer services growing exponentially. It's a function of our water bill, apparently. Right now, my sewer fee per month is twice my water bill. As we continue to expand of necessity the sewer system and the plant over our long-range time, I'm wondering if there is a more equitable way to distribute the costs of that, either through more reliance on the tax base. Now, I do know that people who have septics do have to pay a fee, and they do pay pump-out fees, so they're contributing somewhat. But I'm just wondering if this continued growth in the sewer costs can be addressed in some way. And that one I would send to my friend Patty.
I have this feeling. Ultimately, I would have to say that I don't believe that our system right now, in terms of how we determine the sewer costs, is equitable. The third that we all debated very strongly and had a lot of scrutiny over a number of years ago, in as way as it's playing out, particularly with not many new users coming onto the system, is an overburden on those that are currently in the system. There's no doubt about it. We've taken a lot of steps as a board to look at the finances of this, and I think we need to continue to look at the finances of this. That there are better plans. I'm not sure what they are. It's a very complicated issue as far as who should pay for what in my opinion is water quality. So I think that, you know, depending on where you are with this, it is a community good overall. I don't necessarily believe it should be 100% on the tax base, but I do believe that we could do a little bit better than the system that we have in place right now. We also need to expand the sewer system. New users are important to us, and I think we finally gotten to a place where we are looking at ways to more aggressively include people into the system, to look critically at what we've called our capacity load, particularly at Surfside, and to see how we can make the finances of that work with new users as well.
Mr. Dooley.
I'm not up on that subject, but that, like many things, is something I'd have to be in this office for time to look at, to think about, to talk to other people about, because having certain people in time to time, and again, recycling these people, there's no real new ideas. They just keep going back to the same things. And like I say, I've been home for 10 years, and I haven't seen too much change positive. I just keep seeing more problems to evolve, and nothing's really getting settled. Everybody's talking about it. I think now, this year on your election day, you're going to see changes. No matter who gets in, things are going to start going in the right direction.
Mr. Fee.
This issue is one of the reasons that I'm running again. The numbers tied to zoning need to be completed. It's been 10 years, and we work on them piecemeal, but we really need to take a big look at it. 30 seconds isn't enough to talk about all the details on something like this. You know, right now it doesn't seem equitable, but we have to make sure that we're charging the new connections enough, otherwise all the rest of us are subsidizing it. And we have to also do it in a way that's fair to the people that have septics. So there's a lot of different angles that that need to be addressed, and it really needs to be a priority. Thank you.
Mr. Maury.
We should shift some of the financial burden onto the tax base. The fact is, sewer, even if you have septic at your house, serves the public good. It helps protect the clean drinking water, it helps protect the harbors. There's ancillary benefits to everybody, so a greater portion of the financial burden should be shifted to the tax base.
Ms. Dutton?
I think the current situation and the burden to the people who are on sewer goes directly back to when we were hit with the recession. We all knew economically at some point things were going to slow down here on the island. What happened in 2007 and 2008 is it didn't slow down, it slammed into a wall. And so the anticipated growth as far as the sewer system has not happened. I don't have the answers, as Matt said, in 30 seconds, but we have to keep plugging at it as a board and find some relief for our citizens.
Mr. Reinhardt.
The reason that we have these expenses for the sewer and, of course, for the water is the expansion of population. We're dealing with a year-round population now that's estimated between 11 and 17,000. That's why we had to spend $40 million for a new wastewater treatment plant, and why we spent several $1 million for a couple of new water tanks as well. The question as far as the cost, how should that cost be allotted? As Patty said, we originally started with a one-third, one-third, one-third position. It is a community benefit, and I think that the taxpayer should pick up part of the additional.
Mr. Glidden.
Thank you. I think it's a two-part process. One, we have a lot of sewer we need to deal with, so we need to focus on bringing that down so we're not dealing with as much. You know, I was talking with Mr. Atherton a year ago about if it's yellow, let it mellow, if it's brown, flush it down. And that's something we all need to take responsibility for. As far as the tax, the whole tax base goes, I think people should be included, but I think it's also important for the people who are have their own septic systems. There's a lot of people living on fixed incomes, and those costs need to be taken care of and managed in a holistic way, and we need to get people involved. There's some very smart engineers down at the wastewater treatment facility, and we need to get them involved in dealing with the engineering of the problem, not just the fiscal responsibility of it. Thank you.
Mr. Glidden. You just spoke, okay. I got you checked out. All right. The next question comes from Mr. Kickham.
We have had a significant amount of discussion in the past few town meetings pertaining to renewable energy sources. Despite landscape and financial concerns in the past about these, renewable energy resources, how will the two sides come together to sort of resolve this issue and have some commonality on it? I'll start with Matt.
I think basically we have to look at all of the different options, and then we've got to pick the ones that make the most sense. You have to look at, solar, and you have to look at, some of the other issues that we can do, and then decide which ones. And some of basically there's low-hanging fruit. Some of it is insulation. So if you have X amount of dollars to spend, some of it might be upgrading the town buildings, which we're talking about. We've moved into the planning department, but it's not very well insulated, and it's costing us a ton of money. We could put a little bit of money there and save a lot. So, so once you look at the big picture, you can determine where the money should go. I support it. I support those types of initiatives. And I think, as we see, the windmill doesn't look that bad at the school. A lot of people are against the windmills because of how they look. If they're that size, they are appropriate to Nantucket. So I really, I think, do look at it in total and work backwards to it. Thank you.
Mr. Maury.
As Matt alluded to, the conversation about energy shouldn't just be about renewable energy. It shouldn't be just about wind and solar. It should also be about conservation, and that is going to be where we're going to see the best bang for the buck, I think, in the short term. Long term, we should be looking at wind and solar installations in places where it makes good financial sense in the short term, but we also know we're going to get long-term benefit over the 20 or 30 or 50 years that some of these projects are going to be tying up town land. Breaking even in the short term is not good enough. The technology is getting better, and we can do better with that land over the long haul.
Mr. Glidden.
Thank you. All right, a couple points. One is Nantucket has a history of being an energy-creating island. We are we used to be leaders in the whaling industry, and I want to see that again. I think what we need to do as a town, though, is support the people of Nantucket being responsible for their own energy uses. People pay about 18 cents plus. We have one of the highest cost per kilowatt of energy in the country, and we can help our community by lowering the cost of energy individually. So streamlining the process at the HDC for solar, for smaller wind turbines, I think is important locally, in your own house, be responsible. And then where we want to look at, after we've taken all the responsible steps, looking at larger installations. Thank you.
Ms. Raghaveen?
Sure. My my point would be that we are in agreement on one thing, which is that my sense is that people want to see something done, and that's very important as we go forward. Moving forward in terms of conservation has been a board priority. We made that the priority this year. I think it's shown to be very important as we look at some of the energy efficiencies that we've incorporated into municipality and into private homes. HCC, I totally agree with Toby. I'd love to see the HCC take a hard look at their own restrictions on some of the applications of energy efficiency on private structures, but ultimately it's about the science, what's working, taking a close look at what's going on in other communities, and more importantly, municipality. Are we, as a municipality, in the business of this kind of risk? Do we want this to be a municipal issue or a private sector issue or a combination?
Ms. Dutton?
I think my response to this will be I am definitely in support of alternative energy, and I agree with other board members, as I think Mr. Miller said, let's go for that low-hanging fruit, and the important thing we can do right now is conservation. As far as wind turbines, we should take a lesson from my 5-year-old grandson, Max, who as soon as he gets off the boat or gets off the plane, the first place we go is to the high school, and then we go to Bartlett's. And it's because a 5-year-old finds, and we discuss alternative energy with him. And I feel that it's an economic issue, it's a green issue, and the town should stay very involved with it.
Mr. Reinhardt?
Conservation is the key to where we begin, because I feel that once people take individual responsibility for their own energy use, they become much more aware of the other energy that the town, for example, through the landfill, all the big users. The town is the largest user of electricity, and to their credit, they have been working with the Energy Study Group to do conservation as far as getting LED bulbs into town offices, and also to take the longer range view of in terms of renewable energy.
Mr. Dooley?
We're in the perfect place for hydroelectric and wind power. Solar, it's not sunny that much, but it'll work here. In these times of history and humanity, alternative energies are a need. They are a definite need for the future. And we are in a great place to do it, to fit it right in with nature so it all works together. Not only will it employ people, but at some point we'd be able to be self-sustaining electrically and sell that extra electric energy to the people on the other side.
Now, I see the clock says 1:55, but the good news is it's 2 minutes fast. So I'm going to go for one more question, and I'm going to call on Mr. Barnes to pose it.
I want to circle back to the question of downtown revitalization. In our travels on the mainland and elsewhere, we have seen some very simple, easy parking control systems that do not involve sticking a meter in front of every car space. The pick and pay system, for example, over at the Highline Dock in Hyannis is very unobtrusive. I'm wondering if there would be any support for a parking control system along those lines to help with the downtown situation.
Ms. Raghaveen?
Sure. Parking in town has become one of these issues that unfortunately has gotten more divisive than it should be, in my opinion. We've done a lot this year, and I credit Bruce Miller's activities with NGrid to not only open up new spaces possibly there, but also to take a look at, even the yellow lines in town, which we've spent a lot of time, I think, just painting over or not doing it quite efficiently enough. Those issues and those responses are important. I'm not beyond paid parking. I think we're going to be using the NGrid as a paid parking lot, but I do think we need a little bit more work at studying what the implications are, who's actually using it, an understanding of what it is what the need is particularly, and how that will either help it or not necessarily address it. I'm also thinking, and I think it's important to sort of note that there's never a silver bullet in this on this issue. There's going to be a multifaceted approach. We need more access to town, a better bike path for access into town through bicycles and pedestrians. We need maybe more parking at alternative spaces like N-Grid, and possibly paid parking in terms of, unobtrusive. I don't agree with the meters at every space, would be something else to look at. Again, public transportation. But it's a multifaceted answer.
Mr. Reinhardt?
Every time I've traveled, particularly in Europe, these very small, ancient towns that are much older than Nantucket always seem to have worked out the parking issues. I feel that parking does need to be addressed in downtown, and I feel that there are ways that it can be addressed without necessarily putting up a parking garage, although I'm not necessarily opposed to a parking facility of some sort. I've seen some very, very attractive ones. Parking is a crucial for downtown. I think for the rehabilitation of downtown, it needs to be addressed, and there are certain ways it can be.
Ms. Dunn?
The historic district, the downtown of Nantucket, is one of the architectural gems of the country, if not the world. I do not see increased parking or bringing more cars in on those, I don't want to use old roads, as a solution to anything. I think it's detrimental to the downtown. We subsidize NERDA with our tax dollars, and that's fine, that's public transportation. And what I go back to is Paula Leary's comment at one of the Board of Selectmen meetings several months ago, where July 4th, or one of the weekends that we closed downtown to traffic and cars, she had 100% ridership for that day. Vehicles being jammed into the center of town is a detriment to the community. Thank you.
Mr. Fee?
If I allowed my employees to park in my parking lot at Cliff Road, I'd be out of business. And it's that simple for everyone else downtown. There were recommendations that came out of Remain, a study they did, that we should be following those. The most convenient parking should cost the most convenient parking should cost the most. Why should you pay more to park and walk a half mile? In order to do this, though, we have to bring the employees downtown and the businesses and the rest of the island together and have them understand what's happening by not controlling it and not doing the rules and regulations. You need to set the rules and regulations to have a certain percentage of parking open at any one time. It should be about 10%. And then, so you have to know what's going on and adjust as you go.
Mr. Glidden?
Thank you. The real issue downtown is that there's a bunch of cars and we're growing as an island and we have a limited space. So the solution of paving over areas and changing the character of the downtown district is unadvisable. I think there's a lot of solutions that have already come up with, as Alan mentioned, in ancient communities where they've dealt with this problem of parking. There's a mid-island plan that talks about changing Pleasant and Sparks to be one-ways to bring bicycles in and out of town. We need to talk about the turnover of cars in and out of town, and we just need to generally realize that we need to take this issue seriously. We need to act locally and think globally as far as cars and emissions goes. Climate change is happening, and we need to step forward and take leadership as Nantucketers on this issue. Thank you.
Mr. Maury?
Parking's a problem in town, at least for a few months out of the year. Personally, I'm not in favor of any kind of paid parking on Main or Federal or Center Streets. The solution that Bruce Miller's working on, working with National Grid to develop some sort of a surface parking lot that might have some pay parking there, I think that makes sense. Eliminating yellow lines that restrict parking also makes sense where possible. Certainly we're going to need to figure out some way we can discourage people who tend to park all day in town from doing so. We need to free up as many spaces and reduce the demand on parking in those ways before I would support any sort of pay parking solution. Thanks.
Mr. Dooley?
Limit the amount of automobiles coming every week from off-island to Nantucket. Downtown, Main Street, maybe 2 or 3 side streets. Year-round residents, especially people who live and work in town, stickers, they have priority, no one else. This place would have been a great place for a 2-floor parking garage with a shuttle to town. That way, if you want all these cars here, yeah, you pay the 50 cents, drive to town, and everybody's paying the same thing. You don't have to have the police going around writing a bunch of tickets because they're all out of town. I mean,
Time commitment. How certain are you that your personal circumstances will allow you to fully participate? And I'm going to start on this one with Mr. Glidden.
Thank you, Peter. I have, as a young person, have a lot of energy to run around on my bicycle and move very efficiently and quickly from thing to thing. So in one regards, I deal with it in maximizing my efficiency. And this year, as working as a mason, I started to do a little bit more independent work instead of working for a main contractor. And so now I also have more flexibility to deal with these issues. And also the biggest point about being a selectman is delegating work to people, getting people involved to help me out and to get the community involved. So I think in that regards, I can really be effective. So thank you.
Mr. Reinhardt?
This is one of the issues that I looked at very closely before I put my name in to run for the position. I feel that my schedule is flexible enough and I do have the time and energy to put in what is called for. I do know what the demands of the job are, and I thought about that long and hard before I put my name in. And yes, I feel that I am capable, and I do have the time to spend on the job.
Okay, next we have Mr. Fee.
If you want to get something done, you should give it to a busy person. And that's what my wife's grandfather used to say. And I'm a pretty busy person, but if you give it to me, I'll get it done.
Mr. Maury?
I wish you called on me because that was my line. I'm a small business owner. I'm a real estate agent. I have a lot to do, but most of it can be done on my schedule. Since I started considering running for the Board of Selectmen, I have made every Board of Selectmen meeting. I've gone to most of the FinCom meetings, and I go to all the planning board meetings as an alternate member of that board. So I have made the time, and I will continue to make the time to understand the issues and certainly be at all the meetings that I should be at. Thanks.
Ms. Raghaveen?
Sure. My answer to this actually harkens back to the very first times I was running. I think it's the question I was asked the most, and partly because I had young children, which is interesting to me because my answer is pretty much the same. I think it's really critical that you have a job. I think it's really critical that you have commitments. I think it's really critical that you have a rich and a full life in order to be a good selectman. I've demonstrated over 6 years pretty strongly that I can make the time, and I believe that the folks that are here can make the time. It is a commitment, there's no doubt about it, but if you enjoy what you're doing and you enjoy what you're giving back, I think it's a very important thing to do. And as I think Matt said, for all of us are probably used to juggling a number of things in our days and doing them successfully. So yes, I do feel I have the time.
And next we have Mr. Dooley.
I'm self-employed, have been for a long time. I'm a commercial fisherman. My time is my time. My time can be spent for you, so it can be your time. I have no commitments. My children are all grown. I'm single. I've got lots of time to do the right thing, and I like doing the right thing.
Who have I left out? Ms.
Sure.
Dunn. Okay.
This job takes time? Yes. My husband and I are essentially retired. I certainly have the time, and in the last 3 or 4 years since I've become an involved citizen, I have taken the time to inform myself on issues and become involved, and I will stay involved for you.
Okay, now we come to the polar opposite in terms of questions. This is a tough one. How does the Board of Selectmen transition from constantly putting out fires to doing some in-depth, long-range planning for the town? You have 1 minute to answer that question. And I'm going to call on Mr. Fee first.
I think the Board of Selectmen have to hold town administration accountable. I think you have to work with them and count on them, but you also have to hold them accountable to do the job. If you, so basically, I'm flubbing on it, but it can't. I'll go on. I've lost it.
Okay, Ms. Rogoving next.
I'm going to pick up, it's interesting where Matt's left off. I think that putting out fires is the job of the administration, and continued confidence in the town manager and the role of the town manager, as well as the reorganization that we've witnessed happen with respect to some of the permitting divisions and elsewhere, have really helped take some of the fire putting out responsibilities off our plate. I do think that there's a role, whether it be on a Wednesday night or maybe in workshops, there's different ways that we can actually handle certain issues, whether they be long-term planning on the sewers, erosion, or some of the other things that we've addressed here tonight. And all of us that have been on the board or attended a board meeting know that we're not just busy on Wednesday nights, that oftentimes we do hold workshops in more in-depth kinds of time periods on specific issues, and that gives us that backdrop that we need. We also are in the business of having consultants and town committees who then inform us through their advisory roles on different directions that we might take with some of the backdrop that we need. And all of that works together, I think, to get us to a place where we do have a vision.
The random number generator now points to Mr. Dooley.
People in Nantucket, you're going to have to clean house everywhere. You're going to have to start right from scratch and start putting in the right people. Because, trust me, none of this is going to work. It's all just for show and a lot of talk. If people cannot walk the walk, then the talk is no good. I talk and I walk.
Mr. Maury?
The answer is we don't transition. We're never going to not have fires to put out. There's always going to be a Baxter Road that's falling into the water. There's always going to be a parking problem or some other issue that's going to come before the board. So the long-term strategic thinking and the long-term planning needs to happen at the same time as we're putting out the fires. So you need to elect somebody who you think can help make that happen.
Mr. Reinhardt?
It's very important for Board of Selectmen to have a vision, a long-range vision, as far as an understanding of what the problems are. Now, as far as putting out fires, I remember on my last term on the board, we had Sherburne Commons that came out of the blue, and we spent hours and hours in a conference room dealing with that. We had issues with the landfill. Again, these were issues that had to be dealt with. So I would agree. I think that as a selectman, first of all, you have to have a vision. You have to then direct the town manager who's responsible for carrying out the vision. But once you have a clear vision to make sure that that plan is followed through, I think that there will always be fires to be put out. And again, you want competent people in there who can handle these last-minute situations. For example, a Sherburne Commons or a disaster at the landfill.
Mr. Glidden?
So one of the biggest things the Board of Selectmen does is they appoint members to deal with problems. And we need to have a real strong front in supporting our committees to deal with problems coming up and to deal with the long-term problems facing the town. I see the town as the structure of it is the selectmen are the directors of a company. We have a town manager who's our CEO. And we are looking at the long-term vision, and we are delegating people to deal with the problems coming day to day. If we can build a team, if we can be leaders as selectmen, then we can have a really functioning town. If we can get people involved, we can deal with putting out fires quickly because we've developed trust with our community. So thank you.
Ms. Dunton?
My 30 years in business here leads me to simply say, you first have to have a plan. In most instances currently, we do not have a plan. Once we have a plan, then it's a matter of management. And there will always be fires, but I think as far as the administration putting out, I think sometimes with the current boards of selectmen over the last few years, we need to ask, who lit the fire in the first place? That's my comment.
I've covered everyone, right? Okay, here's the next question, and it actually has been posed by two different people. I'm going to read the crispest statement of it. Growing deficits in town compensation plans are a concern. Article 66 at this year's town meeting will have newly hired town employees join a 401k style plan. Do you support Article 66? If not, why? And I'm going to start with Ms. Raghavan.
We heard a discussion just the other day about Article 66 that was a little bit problematic. And so let me back up to say, in general, I would say, and I've made this commitment over the last 6 years of my time on the board, that fiscal management is really important, the most maybe important thing that we do as a Board of Selectmen. Living within our means is a goal and continues to be a goal of mine. Obviously, with a heavy payroll, as far as the town is concerned, we need to look at all aspects, both longevity and a lot of the benefits and the salaries as we go forward, and we continue to do that. Whether or not Article 66 is going to answer that question, I'm not sure yet. I feel that there's some technical issues involved with that particular article that may or may not address the long-term needs as far as compensation plans. But it's an important step forward, just as we talked about the HDC. It's very important that we take the articles that we present at town meeting and use them as a starting point for further discussion. Oftentimes, whether we get a decision or not at town meeting, we can do more than what the articles themselves suggest, and I would say that this in particular is a really important area where we need to pursue more thinking and decisions.
Mr. Reinhardt?
One of the problems that I have with Article 66 is that it does require that it be negotiated. It's not something that can be just imposed on the town employees. 66 and 67, which deals with longevity, both these are very important issues in terms of the finances for the town. However, as I say, these are not things that the town can just sort of wave a magic wand and say, all right, we're going to do it this way. These are issues that need to be negotiated with the town employees, and you know, as a selectman, I would hate to prejudge any stand that I might take. I think it is important in terms of keeping our fiscal house in order, and I believe that the Board of Selectmen, particularly over the last 5 or 6 years, has done an amazing job in working with the town contracts and getting this under control.
Ms. Dunton?
I was trying to refresh myself on Article 66 for its wording. It's a complicated issue that is a fast and easy response, and as a selectman, I know administration, with support from the current board, is working on this, and I would just continue the direction we're heading to reduce the costs, but still express value to our, for the most part, excellent town employees. Thank you.
Mr. Fee?
This is the key issue. We have 100 fewer people than we did, employees, 100 than 10 or 12 years ago. We're paying about twice as much to everybody. I thank Craig Sperry for bringing this article because it has raised the level of discussion at the FinCom level. We've been talking about it. We're doing better as a town. Like when I was a selectman 10 years ago, the rate, it was 9.7 or 11% a year increase for employee benefits, but we aren't there yet. We're doing, it's 4 or 5% now. But what's happened, that growth, you know, it has crowded out everything else. We don't want to, you know, and right now how we're doing it is we're laying people off, you know, and so what you have to do to fix it is we have to do a full wage and benefit analysis, figure out which people are paid too much, which are paid about right, and which are paid too little, and then when you negotiate, you actually negotiate something that's fair and you target the different levels. There's a way to do it, and right now, just saying we're living within this amount, we aren't living there yet, and B, that doesn't get to the issue of how do you do it fairly, and that would be something that I'd really push as a selectman. Thank you.
Mr. Glidden?
To reiterate what Matt said, again, it needs to come from the people, which I think is great, having an article come forward and to get this discussion going. We need to really look at the long term and the amount of debt that my generation is going to inherit already, which is over $180 million right now without including further on. But I really see the issue as an optimization. We need to look at town employees and say, hey, who's getting paid too little? Who's getting paid too much? How do we make it fair for everyone and just for the people of Nantucket? How do we work together to find a solution to this problem? And I'm not a financial guy. I don't really have that background, but that's something I have a lot of energy and interest in pursuing the Finance Committee last year after not getting elected to be on the Selectmen. And I would like to know more and would try to bring the young people into the Board of Selectmen, some new blood to talk about these issues and how we as young people are going to deal with the town changing over time. So thank you.
Mr. Maury.
The unfunded liabilities that we have for this pension fund is a big problem. I was at that meeting, the FinCom meeting on Thursday. I saw the reports from the representative from the Barnstable County Pension Fund. Frankly, their performance is abysmal. Now, it sounds like it might be a good answer to take all new employees and put them on a different type of plan, but that's problematic. It's something that we're going to have to address with the unions when we negotiate contracts. And from what I heard from the representative from the Barnstable County Fund, it may be illegal. It may be something that we need to address at the State House in Boston before we can even begin to discuss it here. So I'm thankful that the issue's brought up. It's definitely something that needs to be at the forefront of our conversations and our priorities, but I'm not sure that it's actionable as it's written in Article 66.
Mr. Dooley.
I have a Nantucket as work ethic. I work hard. Don't get a lot of money, but I know how to work. And since I've been home, I have seen a lot of people here making a lot of money from the town, getting paid by the town, who don't know how to work and cannot do their jobs. They are dysfunctional.
Okay, we are now at the point where we're going to have closing statements. Each candidate can make a 1-minute closing statement, and I'm going to do it this time in reverse alphabetical order, so we'll start with Ms. Raghaveen.
Well, again, I want to thank everyone. This has been a very enlightening, although short little responses, it's been a very enlightening conversation. I feel like thanks to the questioners, we've touched on, I think, a broad range of the issues that confront the community, and I at least feel that that has given you at least some indication of where I stand on the issues before us. The way I'd like to end then is to sort of ask for your vote on April 9th, as all of us will be doing, and I will be asking for it because of my record on the Board of Selectmen. I had the opportunity to serve you for 6 years. You've had the opportunity to watch me for 6 years. I believe we've had a lot of positive changes and a lot of positive things happen for Nantucket in that context. One of the things, as I noted, that I'm most proud of is the fiscal accountability and changes that have been made over that course of time. And as I began to say in my opening statement, I was not only involved with that at a cursory level on the Board of Selectmen, but heavily involved with that as chairing the Audit Committee, and I believe that that is something that I would like to continue to do for Nantucket going forward. Those skills and those benefits have come from leadership, they've come from team building, and they've come from the ability to make hard decisions and to make them in a way that we bring people together and not be divisive. And I thank you very much for your attention today and look forward to seeing you on Tuesday, April 9th as you drive by and wave to all of us.
Mr. Reinhardt.
Great, thank you. I think that running for public office in a community, particularly in a community such as Nantucket, is one of the highest callings that a community member can have. I think it takes a desire to be a part of the community. I think it takes a vision for the community. Personally, I'm very much interested in conservation, in open space. I love being outside, and I've worked very hard over the years with the work that I've done with the land bank and with other conservation groups to embellish that part of the island. I also am very much interested in town government. I believe that our system of an open town meeting is a real gift that we have, and part of that responsibility is to make a presence in the community, to work for the things that I think are important. So I hope that you'll look at my experience and vote for me on April 9th. Thank you.
Mr. Morey.
Whoever you vote for on April 9th, make it somebody who you think can work effectively with the board members who are there now, with town administration, with the department heads, people who you think can work together to achieve the greatest good for the greatest number of people. I'm not running because there's any one issue that I care about today or in the next 3 years that I might serve, or anything. I mean, what I'm running for is to make this the community that I want to raise my kids in. When I asked my fiance now to marry me, I decided this is where I want to live my life, and that's why I am running for this board. I want to make this the town for my children that I enjoyed growing up here. So that's it. I mean, I'd ask you on the April 9th to vote for somebody, not who maybe you agree with on any one particular issue, but the person who you think is going to spend the time to learn the issues and to get to know the people most affected by each decision to make the best choice for all of us. Thanks.
Mr. Glidden.
I'd like to say thank you to the people of Nantucket for listening to this, and for everyone in the audience for bringing up questions and smiling when you can. That's always important and nice in these seats. I think really why you should vote for me is I'm passionate about living life and dealing with the bigger questions we deal with as a civilization. We're looking at climate change. We're looking at a divided community, and I'm here to try to bring that back together in whatever way I can. And so I asked you to just go out and vote, and encourage your friends to get out and vote, because that's the most important thing we can do. And Nantucket has a legacy of working together as a community to solve big issues, and then the world takes that on. And I really encourage people to get out there and dream to be bigger. The Board of Selectmen needs some new blood. And I hope to be the old blood that's new blood. Thank you.
Mr. Fee.
I also thank everyone that's here. And I wish I spoke and didn't get tongue-tied and spoke as well as some of these other people. But I write well and I think well, and I have the right set of skills to work with the existing board, and I have the experience to do that. If you want someone that dresses fancy and kisses babies and gives favors out and tells you what you want to hear, then I'm not your guy. But if you want someone with integrity who will roll up their sleeves and crunch numbers and make fair and well thought through decisions, then I hope that you vote for me. Thank you very much.
Ms. Dunton.
Kissing babies, Matt, we have to do that. No. It's the waving of the signs at the school, just like, I don't know, that's just so not me. I am running to draw in the broader community. I am running to be your voice. I am running to work for you. I am running to serve you. Not to discredit people who have served, but it is time for new perspectives, new ideas, new voices. 7 people running this year is wonderful. You know, it goes back to the fall when we became so involved in CVS and so involved in the turnout for the November election. Let us keep that energy moving forward to our annual town meeting, and let's do it again come April 9th when you go to the polls. I will have to warn you, I now walk around with a folder full of committee applications. So if I walk up to you, you know what I'm going to do. I want you to join me. I want you to bring enthusiasm, and I'm asking for your vote. Thank you.
Mr. Dooley.
I'm not a politician. I'm a concerned community server, and I see a bright future for Nantucket, especially with these young people. Some of them said some good things. Even the older people are saying good things. All I'm really concerned with seeing the people in Nantucket stand up, stand together. God's got me here. I'm with God. I'd like to see everybody else with God. Can't do it anywhere else. We can do it here. It's small enough, and there's enough of us here to do it. You have to think of the future. You have to think of the younger generation. And like the Indians, take no more than you need and leave it the way you found it. I left Nantucket, it wasn't a mess. And when I die, it's not going to be a mess. It's going to be how it was. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to have about a 60-second seventh inning stretch while we transition from the selectmen candidates to the 4 candidates for SHAB. So I thank you all for helping us be on time.
Thank you.
And I would ask